Hello viewers, you're watching It Matters and I'm your host Kashanta Kaul. Recently, US Peker meeting with Taiwan's president has given an upsurge of military incursions by the Chinese Defense Forces in Taiwan Strait. A lot of diplomats around the world, including Chinese defense forces, are pointing towards the close relationship that US and Taiwan are portraying through such meetings as a reason behind such incursions or drills. According to the Chinese government, they see such meetings as provocations against them. This is the second time within 8 months of period that the world has observed such incursions by the Chinese side. Earlier it was during Nancy Pelosi's meeting, and this time the Taiwan's president with US Speaker that has given rise to such drills in the region. Let's have a quick discussion with the experts and the diplomats around the world to get to know their point of views on the issue and on the matter that do these incursions pose a threat in the future in the region to Taiwan. Just recently, China initiated a 3-day military exercise by the name of United Sharp Sword. This is the second time within 8 months of period that we have seen such military incursions by the Chinese side in Taiwan Strait. It has been observed that whenever Taiwan and USA have a meeting on a diplomatic level, then Chinese initiate such military exercise in the region. What is the reason behind it?
Well, China wants to show that there's not necessarily going to be, they can't, from their perspective, they can't ignore sort of a high-level meeting between the US and Taiwan, right? They feel they have to react to every perceived slight, right? It's certainly, obviously it doesn't deter the US and Taiwan from meeting, but in some sense, this is more for sort of Chinese domestic consumption, right? They want to show the Chinese population that they sort of take this seriously. This isn't the only thing they could have done. They sort of, in an alternate world, they could have simply ignored it. Obviously, they control what media is distributed in China. But this is the path they've taken.
Will USA continue its strategy of ambiguity when it comes to China-Taiwan's issue, as we can't see a strong action or step taken by USA recently on this matter?
Yes and no. I don't see, I think it's unlikely in the near term that you will see official statements from agencies of the executive branch sort of making a formal to pledge a formal defense commitment for Taiwan. Now, as you I'm sure know, President Biden has multiple times over the course of the last couple years, made explicit statements to the effect that yes, the United States would indeed commit itself to the defense of Taiwan if Taiwan were to come under military attack. When he's done that, the professional bureaucracy has kind of gone behind him a little bit to try to downplay it.
But would U.S. forces defend the island?
Yes, if in fact there was an unprecedented attack.
So unlike Ukraine, to be clear, sir, U.S. forces, U.S. men and women, would defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion?
Yes.
I think that policy is there, again, whether it's articulated or not, at least under the current administration, that I think the United States would come to defend Taiwan.
Can the tension between China and Taiwan affect Australia and the other Pacific nations?
The thing is how far Australia and the other Pacific island nations are willing to wade into the Taiwan issue. I think the current Albanese government is playing a very shrewd game, okay, in trying to ally itself, tie itself up with United States at the same time as sending olive branches to Beijing. I think that is a very shrewd game, and something which a lot of the Pacific nations, okay, around East Asia and those around East Asia were playing, okay, just a matter of different degree, that's all. So it's really trying to balance up, how between United States and China, okay? You cannot go away with United States guarantee of security, okay, in a lot of ways. But at the same time, that China, to engage China is not just for your own benefit. It's not just economic benefit. But if you enmesh China within the East Asia framework and the globalized framework, it actually makes China a lot more predictable.
China is doing them in waters that it claims as its own, right, in the Taiwan Strait. So in that sense, the existence of military exercises in your own waters are not particularly interesting to other countries, aside from sort of what capabilities they actually, show and sort of what capabilities are likely to increase through the actual exercises themselves. Generally, authoritarian countries don't have great records of military exercises that actually increase capability. Russia does military exercises all the time. As we've seen, that really hasn't helped them with their actual military skills, right? So, I mean, the point of military exercises has multiple uses, right? I mean, sometimes it's to demonstrate force, sometimes it's to demonstrate capability, sometimes it's to actually improve your capability. So, from the perspective of other Pacific countries, the fact that China is doing military exercises means it's more aggressive, but I wouldn't say that they're necessarily sort of unduly concerned that China's doing exercises off its own coast.
So if in the future China is again engaged to initiate such military exercise in the region, what in accordance to you will be the next step of US?
I think it will probably just do what it's been doing already, right? I mean, the US has been, at least in the past couple of years, ramping up its military presence in Taiwan in terms of military trainers. There used to be no more than 40 on the island at any given time. Now we know sort of in the past year, there are something on the order of 200 military trainers, US military personnel in Taiwan. So it's going back up again, right? I think the US can also sell Taiwan more advanced weapons, more weapons, although in some sense, some of these weapons production is difficult because, sort of production for Ukraine is now also sort of becoming an issue. And the US doesn't have, at least without going on a war footing, the US doesn't have infinite production capabilities, right? So sort of this has become something an issue, but I mean, those are the two things it'll do. I think sort of in the military sphere, the US plans for the defense of Taiwan. It's required to provide for the defense of Taiwan legally under the Taiwan Relations Act. But, sort of that part is now ambiguous. Politically, what will the US do? That part is ambiguous. But if the US decides to engage militarily in the defense of Taiwan, the US military will sort of continue its planning for that.
Okay, so China is not just asserting a military dominance in the region, but it's also trying to assert a sea dominance. As recently, Chinese Coast Guard has claimed that they have legal authority to stop and inspect shipping in the area around Taiwan. How will this be interrupting Taiwan's trading with the world, keeping in mind that how important Taiwan is to the world as it's the leading manufacturer of the computer chips?
That will be very interesting to watch. And actually, I think that was the single most interesting thing that came out of this most recent set of military exercises. It's unclear as to whether or not a serious effort will be actually made to enforce it. But as you were alluding to, the Chinese government did make some announcements to the effect that they might begin screening shipping going into Taiwan, as well as placing restrictions possibly on air traffic in the vicinity of Taiwan. Now, those would both be measures very much directly tied with or central to any potential maritime blockade of Taiwan. And it would certainly be, well, I would say if the Chinese government were to actually take concrete steps in that direction and not just make noises about it. And again, it's going to be very interesting, I think, to watch and observe as to what, if anything, they actually tried to do along those lines. It would be both, from one perspective, sort of a natural progression in the coercive pressure they're levying against Taiwan, as well as a necessary preparation if they were to actually declare and attempt to enforce a blockade.
Well, the thing is, you need to first see, okay, two ways to answer this question. First of all, the Chinese Coast Guard, okay, is this a routine? Is it something that they consider as routine, or is it something to do? They did as a way to send a message. Okay, that's the first thing. All right. If this is something routine, yes, this will be something that Taiwan authorities will be very worried about. Now, second thing is not that when we talk about semiconductors, okay, TSMC is not that is on Taiwan. Yes, they have a foundry in Taiwan, but they likewise have foundry in the United States and elsewhere. So it's you're not looking at. Sorry, say again.
It's the biggest one in Taiwan, 65%.
The biggest one in Taiwan, but recent tensions have, and of course, United States and China trade relations, okay, have actually made TSMC diversify its production line, and that means that it is not, doesn't mean that China wants to blockade Taiwan, it can just cut off the international semiconductor chips altogether. I don't believe in that. Okay, and notwithstanding that, TSMC, while it's one of the biggest, okay, there are also big players around like Samsung and Intel. Okay, Intel just announced that they are building the foundry. They're actually building the capacity as well.
So it has been seen that whenever Taiwan and USA have a meeting on a diplomatic level, then China initiates a military drill or incursions in the Taiwanese Strait. What is the reason behind it? Is it to assert dominance in the region and to tell to the Pacific nations that you need to recognize my position when it comes to the Taiwanese issue?
Of course, that's exactly what they're trying to do. All right, but this is you're talking about a power, okay, a power that has been denied the status of great power for many years, okay, for good 80 years now. All right, China has always seen itself as a great power, okay, but because of internal strife, because of Western incursion in the 19th century, they have suffered quite a lot. And now they found themselves back in the position they thought that they have found their feet, okay. And based on what CCP has tried to champion, they are actually raising the stake in protecting the prestige of the Chinese nation. Okay, that is what the CCP stands for today. Okay, and so in a lot of ways, it is showing that it is ready to be a big power and is willing to wield its military might or economic might.
In the past 8 months, China's policy towards Taiwan has been very rigorous, as during Nancy Pelosi's meeting, they carried out 56 incursions in one single day in Taiwanese Strait, and a similar amount of incursions has been seen this time as well. This is within 8 months. Can we say that Chinese policy towards Taiwan has been very rigorous recently?
Again, from Beijing's perspective, they are very unhappy with Taiwan's government being in the hands of the Democratic Progressive Party, which Beijing has publicly and repeatedly labeled as separatist, again, using Beijing's term. And they have effectively frozen out any sort of public government-to-government contacts between the two sides. They've tried to deny, Taiwan's DPP-led government all legitimacy. I think a large part of it is driven by the personality of Xi Jinping. Although he again, under his tenure, that course of pressure against Taiwan has dramatically increased. Now, that's not entirely his innovation. There's been a longer term trend that predates Xi towards this insistence on Beijing's rights of sovereignty over Taiwan and of eventual unification and so forth. But Xi Jinping has definitely intensified that pressure. And I think that's in no small part a reflection of his own views, his own outlook. In autocratic states, the person who holds supreme executive power really matters. Xi Jinping could wake up any day and decide that it's go time,